Hey guys, College Algebra, Northern Oklahoma College, Math 1513, Chapter 2, Section 3. And this is probably my longest title ever. Find the equation of a line if given a point on the line and given the equation of a line that lies parallel or perpendicular to it. So we're going to be given 2 points of information. We're going to be given the coordinates of a point that is on the line. What else do we need? We need the slope. And if we look at a parallel or perpendicular line, we can tell what the slope of our line is. All right, let's review parallel and perpendicular lines. And let's look at their slopes. Now, we talked about parallel a while ago. Let's say that I have a line. I'm going to put a dot there. And let's say it goes up 2 over 3 and up 2 over 3. So my line has a slope of 2/3. Now a line that's parallel to it would have the exact same slope because it would also have to go up 2 over 3, up 2 over 3, up 2 over 3. And there we go. Parallel lines kind of look like railroad tracks. They run the same direction forever. So this line also has a slope of up 2 over 3, or 2/3. Same thing works when you're going in a negative direction. Let's say I start up here and go down, let's go down 4 over 3, and down 4 over 3. That's a pretty steep slope, and it's going downhill. So that's a slope of -4 over 3. And if I just put a random dot out here, and I want to draw a line parallel to that, well, I got to have the same slope. So I got to go down 4 and over 3, down 4 and over 3. As long as I have the same slope, I know those lines will be parallel. So parallel lines have the same slope. All right, perpendicular lines. Let's start right here. And let's say I go up 2 and over 3, and up 2 and over 3. So same line. Our slope, again, is 2/3. Now how do I draw a line perpendicular to it? Well, perpendicular lines have a slope that's called a negative reciprocal. What's a negative reciprocal? Reciprocal means you flip the fraction upside down. Okay, I shouldn't have written equal here because they're not equal. So reciprocal means you flip the fraction upside down. Negative just means it'll be the opposite sign. So since my 2/3 is positive, my other fraction has to be negative. They just have to be opposite signs. Negative reciprocal doesn't mean the second fraction will always be negative. It just means it will always be opposite sign. So the slope of my perpendicular line needs to go down 3 and over 2. So I'm just going to start right here at this dot here and go down 3 and over 2, and down 3 and over 2. And if I wanted to reverse it, I would go up 3 and left 2 just to find another dot. And I draw this. And that's the line perpendicular. Its slope is not 2/3, but it's -3 over 2. We flip it and make it opposite sign. Now how do we mark it as perpendicular? We just put a little box in the corner. That tells us they cross at a 90-degree angle. So perpendicular lines cross at a 90-degree angle. All right, here's just a little illustration of how the slopes compare. So the slope of parallel lines, if I say the slope of my first line is 4 over 5, well then of course the slope of a line parallel to it will be 4 over 5. And if the slope is -2 on my first line, the slope will be -2 on the second line, and so on. A slope of 3 will be a slope of 3 on the second line. Parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, by the way, here's the symbol for perpendicular. If you don't want to write out the whole word, you can use that symbol. There's a new mathematical symbol for you. So the slopes of perpendicular lines, well, let's start with the 4/5 again. What would the slope of the line perpendicular to it be? It'd be a negative reciprocal. There's the reciprocal, and by making it negative, it's opposite sign. Remember, they're called negative reciprocals. Okay, slopes of perpendicular lines are negative reciprocals. What if I have the -2 slope like I had on the other table? Well, I need to flip it. Now before I can flip it, it has to be a fraction. So let's make it a fraction. You can put any number over 1. Flip it, that's the reciprocal. And negative reciprocal just means it needs to be the opposite sign. So since my -2 was negative, my negative reciprocal will be a positive 1 over 2. I'm going to go ahead and put a positive there. You don't have to put a plus there, but just to get the point across, they have to flip the fraction and be opposite signs. That's what negative reciprocal means. And finally, if I have a slope of 3 for my first line, and I want to know what the slope of the perpendicular line is, just make it a fraction, flip it over, and make sure they're opposite signs. That's what negative reciprocal means. Okay, so let's do an example. I want the equation of a line. I'm going to call it my line. I want the equation of my line. I know my line passes through the point -2, 4. I know my line goes through that. And I know that my line is parallel to this line. Okay, that's not the equation of my line. That's the equation of a different line. But I know that my line runs parallel to it. Well, since I know that my line runs parallel to it, I know that my line has the same slope as their line. Their line has a slope, that's their m, remember? Y equals mx plus b. So their line has a slope of -1. That means that my line has a slope of -1. So what do I know so far? I know that my line, if I'm writing the equation of my line, I know that my slope is -1. So I'm replacing the m with -1. What else do I need? I need a y-intercept. But they didn't give us a y-intercept. They gave us a point that the line goes through. So what we're going to do is we're going to borrow that x and y from that point that my line goes through. We're going to borrow that x and y just for a second so that I can figure out what my y-intercept is. Once I know my slope and my y-intercept, I can write the equation of my line. So I take out my y and put in a 4, because I'm borrowing the 4. Take out the x and put in a -2. Now this is why I say use parentheses, okay? Because that looks like -1 minus 2. And what I want it to say is -1 times -2, because it's m times x. So we got to show multiplication. So always use parentheses. It separates the negative, kind of organizes the expression, and it shows multiplication. So always, always, always use parentheses when you take out that x. And then plus b, and now let's do the math. So 4 equals, that's going to be +2 plus b, minus 2 from both sides, and 2 equals b. Okay, so I have everything I need. I know that my slope is -1 because their slope was -1 and my line was parallel to it. Then I borrowed an x and a y, and I found out that my y-intercept is 2. So I have everything I need to write my equation. So y equals mx plus b. All I need to do is take out the m and take out the b and put in the numbers, and I have my equation. So y equals, what's my m? -1 x. And then plus b, 2 is positive, so it actually is plus. So -1x plus 2. If you want to write it a little bit shorter, you can just write it as -x plus 2. Either of those is correct. Okay, here's a good problem. I like this problem. We have to kind of put everything together here. So my line passes through the point -3, 4. And I know that my line is perpendicular to this line. Okay? My line is perpendicular to that line. That's not my line. I'm just using that line for information. I know that my line is perpendicular to that line. So the question I'm asking is, what's my slope? Okay? Before I can figure out what my slope is, I need to know what their slope is. And their equation's not in slope-intercept form. So we need to reorganize it so that it looks like y equals mx plus b. Because if I put it in that order, then I know where my slope is. So let's reorganize their equation. 3x minus 2y equals 5. Let's reorganize their equation and get that y alone, okay? First thing I'm going to do is move the 3x over out of the way. So my 3x is gone because I want to get my y alone. Remember, that's what we're going for. I want to get y alone. That puts it in slope-intercept form. Move the 3x over, and now I have negative 3x. I want to write the 3x first, and remember it's negative. And then I have my 5, and remember it's positive, so we write plus 5. And the last thing I do to get my y alone is I divide everything by negative 2. Okay, my y is alone. Now negative 3 over negative 2 is really positive 3 over 2, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So I have 3 over 2x. And then a positive 5 over negative 2 is really a negative, because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So I write minus 5 over 2. Okay, that's the equation of their line in slope-intercept form. Okay, keep that straight. That's not my line, that's their line. Okay, so what is their slope? Their slope is what? Remember, it's in front of the x here. Their slope is 3 over 2. What's my slope? Okay, remember the instructions up here. They said that that line is perpendicular to my line. So if their slope is 3 over 2, and my line is perpendicular to it, my slope must be the negative reciprocal. So I flip it over, and I make it the opposite sign. That means my slope is negative 2/3. Okay, let me clean off the board here and get some room. So far we know my slope. All right, got some room to work now. All right, we did all that. We put their equation in slope-intercept form. We figured out what their slope was, and that told me what my slope is. So my slope is negative 2/3. Now how do I write my equation? Y equals mx plus b. I know what my m is. It's negative 2/3. So I take out the m, put in a negative 2/3. I'm going to have to borrow that negative 3/4, because the next number that I need is my y-intercept. They didn't tell me what my y-intercept is, so I'm going to have to calculate it. So let's borrow this x and y, because I know my line goes through there, so those points are going to work. Let's borrow that x and y. So take out the y, put in a 4, take out the x, use parentheses, and there's your plus b, and let's do the algebra. So 4 equals, that's going to be a positive 2 plus b minus 2 from both sides, and our b equals 2. So now I know my slope and my y-intercept. I can write my equation. All right, so to write the equation, one more time, you need an m and a b. You need your slope and you need your y-intercept. So y equals, we figured out that my slope is negative 2 over 3, x about halfway up, and our y-intercept is 2, and it's positive, so we write plus 2. So there's the equation of our line.